Vikings fans, something is happening inside Minnesota right now, and honestly, Vikings Nation can feel it. The quarterback room is turning into complete chaos. Another shocking name just got connected to the purple and gold. TJ Hawkinson is suddenly fighting for his future, and now Dallas Turner is finally getting the kind of respect fans have been waiting to see. But maybe the biggest twist of all, the growing belief that J.J. McCarthy could actually lose this battle before the season even begins. And if that happens, everything changes for the future of this franchise. There's a feeling starting to creep into this fan base again. That uncomfortable feeling where every answer somehow creates two more questions. Because right now, Minnesota has an honest-to-goodness quarterback competition happening inside that building. Alec Lewis confirmed it. Tom Pelissero confirmed it. This is real. Kyler Murray walked into Minnesota as the favorite. And honestly, he should be. The guy's a former Offensive Rookie of the Year, a two-time Pro Bowler, and when he's healthy and locked in, he can absolutely stress defenses in ways most quarterbacks simply can't. But the problem is, Vikings fans have seen talented quarterbacks come through this franchise before. Talent alone doesn't calm nerves around here anymore. People want certainty now. And then there's J.J. McCarthy, young, unproven, still carrying all the hope this organization placed on his shoulders when they drafted him. Kevin O'Connell clearly wants competition. He wants both guys pushing each other every single day. That part makes sense. But what really caught my attention was what started surfacing behind the scenes about Oregon quarterback Dante Moore. Billy Hyen from the Sporting News connected Minnesota to Moore as a possible future option if this whole thing falls apart. And man, that's where the anxiety starts kicking in. Because if the Vikings are even being mentioned in conversations about another early-round quarterback, that means people around the league genuinely believe there's a chance neither Murray nor McCarthy fully locks this thing down. That's a scary thought this early into the process. Dante Moore is talented, big arm, high upside, but hearing his name attached to Minnesota right now almost feels like hearing storm sirens in the distance. Nobody wants this team picking inside the top 10 again because that means something went seriously wrong. And while fans are stressing over quarterbacks, another storyline quietly showed up that honestly surprised me even more. Ivan Pace Jr., one of the most beloved underdog stories on this roster, is suddenly being discussed as a potential cut candidate. That hurts to even say out loud. Kyle Judry pointed toward Minnesota reducing his workload, Eric Wilson overtaking him last season, and the financial flexibility tied to releasing him with zero dead money. Football is brutal sometimes. One minute you're the heart and soul grinder fans rally around. Next minute the business side shows up cold as ice. And if Pace actually loses his spot later this offseason, it'll be another reminder that this roster is entering a completely different phase than the one we all got emotionally attached to a couple years ago. And just when you thought the quarterback room couldn't get any stranger, ESPN dropped gasoline on the fire. Seth Walder floated a trade idea that would send Anthony Richardson to Minnesota for a 2027 fifth-round pick. At first, I laughed it off. Then I kept thinking about it. And honestly, it's exactly the kind of move Kevin O'Connell might talk himself into. Because Richardson is still one of the most physically gifted quarterbacks in football. 6'4", cannon arm, freak athlete. The upside is obvious. The problem is everything else. Injuries, inconsistency, benchings, chaos. Indianapolis already reportedly gave him permission to seek a trade, which tells you everything about how unstable that situation became. But from Minnesota's perspective, you can at least understand the temptation. Kyler Murray is only on a one-year deal. McCarthy still hasn't fully convinced everyone. Carson Wentz is a bridge option at best. Max Brosmer is developmental depth. So now imagine tossing Richardson into that room too. Suddenly this quarterback situation starts looking less like competition and more like survival of the fittest. And honestly, that's not always healthy for a locker room trying to build stability. And here's the part that really grabbed me. ESPN openly questioned whether Richardson could eventually become a better long-term gamble than McCarthy. That's the uncomfortable conversation Vikings fans don't want to have yet. Because McCarthy was supposed to be the future, the guy Kevin O'Connell molded into the face of the franchise. Instead, here we are entering another offseason where people outside the building are already wondering if Minnesota should pivot again before that vision fully materializes. That's dangerous territory emotionally for a fan base that desperately wants stability at quarterback for once in its life. And financially, sure, a fifth-round pick isn't much. That's almost nothing for a former top-5 talent. But roster-wise, somebody pays the price. You can't realistically carry 5 quarterbacks into the season. Somebody gets squeezed out. Maybe it's Wentz. Maybe Brosmer disappears before he ever gets a chance. Or maybe, and this is the part nobody wants to say too loudly, McCarthy himself becomes part of a bigger reset conversation if he loses ground during camp. Imagine how loud that conversation gets if Murray clearly outplays him in preseason. That's why this story feels heavier than people realize. This isn't just another trade rumor. This feels like the Vikings quietly preparing for every possible outcome, because deep down, even they might not fully know what this quarterback room is about to become. Meanwhile, one of the most important veterans on this offense just got handed a very clear message from the organization: perform now, or your future here gets complicated fast. Earlier this offseason, Minnesota restructured T.J. Hawkinson's contract. Tom Pelissero reported the details, and while it lowered his cap number by $5 million, it also removed the final year of his deal. That part matters a lot, because now 2026 becomes a contract year for Hawkinson whether he likes it or not. And Vikings fans know how dangerous contract years can become emotionally. Sometimes players explode, sometimes pressure changes everything. Hawkinson has been one of the toughest, most reliable pieces of this offense when healthy. But this situation feels different now because the competition for touches keeps growing. Justin Jefferson is still the centerpiece. Jordan Addison wants a bigger role. Jawan Jennings is now in the mix too. And depending on who wins the quarterback job, the entire passing game could shift stylistically overnight. That's where things get interesting. If Kyler Murray starts, there's reason for optimism because Murray historically feeds his tight ends. That could help Hawkinson put up monster numbers again. But if McCarthy wins, that chemistry still has to be built from scratch under live pressure. Luke Norris pointed out that Hawkinson is essentially auditioning for his next payday right now, whether it comes from Minnesota or somewhere else. That's the reality. And honestly, it's weird thinking about this offense without him because for a while there, he felt like one of the emotional pillars of Kevin O'Connell's system. Tough catches over the middle, reliable third down target, physicality, leadership, the kind of player quarterbacks lean on when things get ugly. But the NFL moves fast, especially when contracts and cap flexibility start entering the conversation. Rob Brzezinski has never been afraid to make cold-blooded decisions if it helps the long-term structure of the roster. We've seen it before. So now the pressure shifts directly onto Hawkinson's shoulders. Big season equals leverage. Quiet season? Suddenly the future gets murky fast. And the craziest part is, even while all this offensive uncertainty is happening, another young Viking might finally be stepping into the spotlight defensively at exactly the right moment. You know what's funny? Sometimes a player develops so quietly that people almost forget how talented he actually is. That's exactly what's happening with Dallas Turner right now. When Minnesota drafted him 17th overall back in 2024, the expectation was obvious. Future defensive star, explosive edge rusher, game wrecker. But then, reality hit. Jonathan Greenard and Andrew Van Ginkel came in and instantly became one of the best edge duos in football. Suddenly, Turner was stuck waiting for opportunities instead of living in the spotlight. And for young pass rushers, that can get frustrating fast. Fans start asking questions. People wonder if the pick was worth it. But here's the thing nobody talks about enough. Development in the NFL isn't always linear. Sometimes players need time before the switch flips. And quietly, Dallas Turner started flashing late last season. NFL.com's Tom Blair pointed out that Turner's 8-sack season almost went under the radar, especially because 4.5 of those sacks came late in the year when a lot of people had already mentally checked out of Minnesota's season. But inside that building, they noticed, coaches noticed, teammates noticed. Those flashes mattered more than people realize. And now, with Jonathan Greenard gone, the runway is finally opening. This is Turner's chance to become the player this franchise envisioned when they called his name on draft night. And honestly, the timing couldn't be more important because the Vikings desperately need one of these recent first-round investments to truly explode. Whether it's Turner or McCarthy, somebody from that era of roster building has to emerge as a foundational star. That pressure is real. And then came the quote that probably made half this fan base sick to their stomach. Bleacher Report's Gary Davenport basically predicted the quarterback battle is already over before it even starts. According to him, Kyler Murray is simply better than McCarthy right now in almost every measurable category. More experience, better production, more proven. And logically, he's not wrong. But emotionally, Vikings fans don't want logic anymore. They want hope. They want the young quarterback they invested in to actually become the future instead of another almost story in franchise history. Because if McCarthy loses this battle cleanly, the noise around him is only going to get louder. Every throw in camp will get dissected. Every mistake becomes a headline. And if he somehow beats Murray, then maybe, finally, the Vikings really did find their long-term answer. That's why this training camp feels enormous. Not just for 2026, for the entire direction of the franchise moving into the next decade. That's what makes this team so hard to stop thinking about right now. There's talent everywhere. There's hope. There's opportunity. But there's also pressure building at almost every major position that matters. Quarterback uncertainty, veterans fighting for their futures, young players trying to prove they belong. It feels like the entire identity of this team is balancing on the edge of something important, and maybe that's why Vikings fans stay emotionally locked in no matter how exhausting it gets. Because someday, eventually, all this tension has to lead somewhere worth celebrating. So let me know down in the comments, who do you trust most right now to shape the future of this franchise? Kyler Murray, JJ McCarthy, or somebody we're not even talking about yet? Stay tuned. Skol Vikings, let's go.